Hey there, everybody. I live here in the Bay Area, and one of the most common weed-like plants in the Bay Area is the so-called Nasturtium. Tropaeolum, however you pronounce it, Tropaeolum is the genus of this family. This is a family of plants that originates in Central and South America, and they are, or were, both is true, of great economic importance to Andean peoples. In fact, this is what is known, in botany as a cultigen, or at least that's one name. It's a plant that does not exist in the wild. There are no wild versions of this. Either humans crossed it, or they found a cross and they kept propagating it. Like many members of the Brassica family being the family of mustard and Brussels sprouts and cabbage, etc., it is self-fertile. And this also sprouts, from little roots it puts as it goes along. And so today in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I've learned about this plant, which is quite interesting. Okay, here we go. So how do we know that it's related to Brassica? How do we know it's related to these guys? The answer is, well, I'm not exactly sure. Typically you do molecular studies. You try to study how certain genes that didn't change much across several plants, cladistics or taxonomy. Those phylogenetic studies on protein structures and genes. Apparently, one of the biggest clues to their relationship is not morphological. We'll talk about the shape of the flower in a minute. It has to do with the fact that they use very similar or identical chemicals to protect themselves against predation. The very same chemicals that attracted humans to cultivating Brassica in Europe and Asia attracted probably humans to cultivating Tropaeolum or Nasturtium in the Andes. They're called glucosinolates. You'll have to look up that on the Wikipedia. The chemistry is quite complex and it has to do with how glucosinolates are a group of glucosides that bond different hydrocarbons. I don't understand it. Look it up. It's complex. It's very interesting. So when you look at, you should go on to the Jeff Bezos fan club and buy yourself one of these. Definitely made in Germany, even though it's misspelled. Not made in China, of course. When you pick up a Brassica and you look in here, you will see something quite interesting, 4 petals, and you will see probably 10 stamens, 10 male parts. And one thing that's been known about these guys for a long time is that they don't work too hard to outcross, meaning these plants don't work too hard to not self-fertilize. They like to pleasure themselves and reproduce by themselves. Although some outcrossing does happen, they are pollinated by insects, etc., maybe by wind, and so you do get some genetic variation in the Brassica family. Later studies in the 20th century showed that no, some of these do have structures to make sure that they don't pollinate themselves, or some of them do at least. And let's talk about some of those structures. One of the ways you can do that is protandry, and the other way you can do it is protogyny. Either you put the male parts out first, and then you retract them, and you put the female parts out first, or you reverse the order. And there's other ways, like, pine trees, one tree is male, one tree is female. There's different ways, dioecious. There's different ways to do this. This plant is interesting because it is self-fertile. One of the reasons why it's a weed in the Bay Area. It grows everywhere, right? Apparently, originally it was cultivated in the lowland deserts of Peru, Lima today. Interesting stuff. Apparently, this is, I think it's protandrous. It puts the male part. I checked it with these plants and I looked online. It puts the male parts out first. And if you can zoom into this, you can see that this plant, this flower, which is it's in the most flowery state. It's in full anthesis, has the male part sticking out in front of the female part. And later on, you'll see the male parts drop. Interestingly, however, this has only 8 stamens, whereas these guys have 10. So some evolutionary change did happen. What I want to show you here, most important to me, is this spur, called a calyx spur. Why does it have this? Why do you think it would have this? Well, let me rip it off. And you can look through there. And you can imagine that if you've got a big long beak and a big long tongue, you may want to fly in there and lick up the nectar that drips from the necatries in the back here down into this spur. And if you grab any fully developed flower, like this one right here, and you slice open the spur, and you lick it, it is sweeter than honey. What surprises me about this plant is that I've never seen a hummingbird pollinated here. So for some reason, I mean, it's not native to California. For some reason, the local hummingbirds are not interested in this. I don't know if hummingbirds pollinate it in the Andes, where there's a close relative, Tropaeolum tuberosum, where they eat the roots of it. It's like a potato, you know. I don't know if it doesn't have the spur. This does. I don't know if this is pollinated by hummingbirds there, but I will tell you one thing. In the New World, if you see a plant with a big spur like this, you can be dead sure, at least I've been told you can be dead sure, that it is pollinated by hummingbirds. And it is sweet, baby. If I were a hummingbird, I'd want to stick my face into this. Anyway, that's a few little facts about the Nasturtium, Tropaeolum majus, Tropaeolum majus. Very common in the Bay Area, a weed. Excellent in salads, very sweet flowers. You can eat it, just make sure you wash it real good. Lots of vitamin C, healthy, and created by humans from nature for humans.